If your family is trying to choose between moving to Southlake or Colleyville, this video is not really about which one is going to be nicer. It's about which one fits your family better, because on paper, these two can actually look pretty similar. Both areas have nice homes, strong reputations, good locations, and great family appeal. But once you start looking at schools, housing, daily routine, price, and what your money is really buying, they separate pretty quickly. Here is the simplest way to think about it. Southlake is going to be the one that usually makes the stronger impression. Colleyville usually feels quieter, more understated, and for some families more practical for the day-to-day life. That does not make one better than the other. It just means that they fit different families for different reasons. So in this video, I'm gonna walk you through schools, housing, everyday feel, location, value, and then I'll give you a very clear answer on who should choose Southlake and who maybe should choose looking into the city of Colleyville. Now, my name is Kristen Carpentier, and I'm a Dallas-Fort Worth area realtor. I am a mom of 4, and I help a lot of families narrow down exactly this kind of a decision. So let's get into it. Now, the first big difference that you're going to find in the overall feel between the two is that Southlake feels more like a destination. It has a stronger identity, a more polished image, and a little bit more of that everybody knows Southlake factor. And Southlake Town Square is going to be a big part of that. Even something simple like grabbing coffee, meeting friends, or running a couple of errands can feel a little bit more like you are in a place with a strong center and a strong brand. Now, for some families, that is exactly the draw that they're looking for. They want that stronger sense of place. They want that polished environment. They want the suburb itself to feel like it is a part of the upgrade. And Colleyville is going to feel a little bit different. Colleyville is still very nice. It's still upscale, still absolutely a serious option for higher budget buyers, but it feels more residential, a little bit quieter and less image-driven day to day. Now, it is the kind of place where you may be driving between school activities, the grocery store, dinner, and home, and it just feels easier and a little less curated. Now, some buyers walk into Southlake and immediately think this feels like the premium suburb that we had in mind. Other buyers walk into Colleyville and think, well, this really feels more like how we actually want to live. And that is really the heart of this comparison. Now let's talk about location and everyday convenience, because this is where Colleyville can get more interesting than people expect. Both cities are in a really strong part of the DFW Metroplex if you want to have good access around the metro, and especially if convenient airport access matters to you. But they do not live the same. Southlake feels more like you are choosing Southlake on purpose. Colleyville feels a little bit more woven into the normal flow of this particular part of DFW. And that matters for real family life. If one parent travels often, if you are regularly heading towards the airport, if you're moving around to Grapevine, the mid-cities, or even different activity hubs, Colleyville can feel very efficient. But if your family likes the idea of living in a place with a stronger sense of gravity, where the suburb itself feels like a part of the lifestyle, Southlake is usually going to do a little bit better at that. Now, a good way that I like to think about this is Southlake often feels more like the place you are going to, and Colleyville often feels more like the place you are living in. Now, neither one of them is going to be wrong. It just kind of depends on what your family likes and what you're looking for. Now let's get into the schools, because this is one of the biggest reasons families compare these two in the first place. Southlake gets a lot of attention because of Carroll ISD, and that is very real when we talk about Home with the Dragons. And a lot of families have Southlake on their short list because they are thinking specifically about the Carroll ISD school district. But here's the mistake that I would really want you to try and avoid. Don't assume that just the Southlake city name is automatically going to mean that you are zoned into Carroll ISD. If Carroll is a major reason that you are considering Southlake, you need to verify the actual property, not the city name, not the listing headline. And I talk about this with my clients all the time, and not even the zip code, but you need to focus in a little bit more on the actual property. This is one of the biggest trust builder details in this whole comparison, because a lot of buyers make some assumptions a little bit too early. On the Colleyville side, a lot of families are looking at the Grapevine-Colleyville Independent School District. Still a great school district, and I think this is where some buyers get a little bit lazy. The Grapevine-Colleyville School District should not just be brushed off because it's not going to be Carroll ISD. That is a little bit too simplistic. The better question is not which district has the louder reputation. The better question is whether the specific home in the specific location actually fits what your family wants. So my short version on schools is this. Now, if Carroll ISD is a major priority, Southlake has a very real edge, but only if the property actually lines up the way you think that it does. If your family wants strong schools in an upscale suburban setting, but you are not exclusively chasing the Carroll name, Colleyville gets a lot more competitive than some people maybe even expect. This is the smarter way to think about schools here. Now let's talk about housing and value, because this is where families usually start asking some of the harder questions. Southlake generally plays at a higher level in both price and perception. And the key question is, what are you paying for? In Southlake, you're often paying for a mix of things. You're paying for sure for the name. You're paying for the image, and you're paying for the stronger suburb identity, the premium feel, and the school alignment if that applies to you. And the fact that Southlake is one of those places people immediately recognize, some families absolutely want that. And for them, it can end up being worth it in the long run if that's what they're looking for. But if I am talking to a practical move-up buyer, the more useful question is this: are we paying for the house, the lot, the location, and the way that we actually want to live? Or are we paying a noticeable premium just because the sign says Southlake? Now, for some buyers, the premium feels worth it because the Southlake identity and Carroll alignment are the point. For others, they would rather put that same money into more of a house, more of a lot, or a quieter day-to-day fit. Now, that is going to be where Colleyville gets very interesting, because Colleyville can make a lot of sense for buyers who want premium living, attractive neighborhoods, strong family appeal, and a quieter day-to-day experience without feeling like they are paying mainly for the strongest label in the room. But that does not mean that Colleyville is cheap, because it most certainly is not. It just means that for some families, the value can feel better aligned with what they actually care about. And that is going to be a big difference, especially for buyers who are less focused on status and more focused on the home itself, the neighborhood itself, and how daily life will actually feel once they finally get to move in. Now let's get even a little bit more practical and talk about the day-to-day life, because this is usually where families start leaning more in one particular direction. If you are the kind of buyer who loves a polished, more recognizable suburb and you want your environment to feel clearly premium, well, Southlake tends to land really well there. You feel it in the town square, you feel it in the other public spaces all throughout the town of Southlake, and you feel it in the overall image. And for the right buyer, that is pretty exciting, especially if you are making a move here. It feels a little bit more aspirational, and it feels like it's a little bit worth paying for. Colleyville, though, feels a little bit more quiet and a little bit more residential. The premium side is there, but it is a little bit more less in your face. It is more the feeling of nice neighborhoods, mature landscaping, strong family appeal, and a calmer everyday rhythm. And that matters more than a lot of people think. Because once you move somewhere, the question is not just how impressive it looks on a Saturday afternoon. The question is how it feels on, let's say, a Tuesday at school drop-off. Maybe a quick grocery run, maybe getting your kids to practice, and picking up dinner on the way home after a busy day. Getting to the airport without it feeling like a whole production is another big factor. Southlake often feels more polished and a little bit more intentional. Colleyville often feels a little bit more relaxed and a little bit more natural. And I think different buyers respond differently to that. The buyer who wants stronger pride of place and a more obvious premium environment usually reacts really well to Southlake. And the buyer who wants quality, comfort, convenience, and a little less brand-driven energy often reacts really well to moving to Colleyville. Now, one more thing before I give you the verdict. Do not compare these two only by their city names. Compare the actual property that you might be looking at, because once you get into this price range, small differences in lot, updates, school alignment, location within the suburb, and total monthly costs can change the answer pretty quickly. That is one of the biggest mistakes that some families might make. They fall in love with the city before they really kind of compare the house. So here is my clear verdict. Choose Southlake if your family wants the stronger name, the stronger identity, and that more polished premium feel. It is also the better fit if the Carroll ISD alignment is a major priority and the specific property checks that box. Choose Colleyville if you want premium living with a quieter, more residential, and often more practical day-to-day fit. And here's the part I would really want you to remember. If you are the kind of buyer who wants the strongest suburb identity in the comparison, Southlake is probably going to be the better fit. If you want premium living, but you do not need the loudest version of it, Colleyville may actually be the smarter choice. And that is the decision. Not which one sounds fancier, not which one gets a little bit more attention, but which one fits the way your family actually wants to live. So if you are still comparing high-end suburbs in this part of the DFW Metroplex, watch the next video on the screen because that will help you get even more specific about what kind of fit you really want. And if you're relocating here to DFW or moving up locally and want help narrowing down the right suburb for your family, all of our contact information is in the description, and I am just a quick text, call, or email away. And until next time, take care.